The message arrived at Earth's diplomatic center at exactly 0800 hours. Galactic Standard Time. Kyung-ho was drinking his morning coffee when his assistant Dong-soo burst through the office door, holding a data pad with shaking hands. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," Dong-soo said, his voice tight with worry. Kyung-ho looked up from his morning reports. At 45 years old, he had seen enough urgent messages to know which ones were truly important. The look on Dong-soo's face told him this was one of those times. "What is it?" Kyung-ho asked, setting down his coffee cup. "It's from the Galactic Trade Consortium. They're calling for an emergency session. The Villani are dying." Kyung-ho took the data pad and read quickly. The Villani were a peaceful species that looked like tall, gentle deer. They had been part of the galactic community for over 200 years. They grew the best food in 3-star systems and never bothered anyone. Now the Thrakari Empire was slowly killing them. The Thrakari were different from the Villani in every way. Where the Villani were peaceful farmers, the Thrakari were warriors and hunters. They had sharp teeth, claws, and an empire built on taking what they wanted from others. For 6 months, they had been blocking Villani trade routes and demanding impossible payments. The consortium tried everything, Dong-soo explained as Kyung-ho read. They sent their best diplomats. They offered the Thrakari money, land, even mining rights. Nothing worked. The Thrakari just laugh at everyone. Kyung-ho finished reading and looked up. "And now they want me to fix it. The message specifically asks for you, sir. It says traditional methods have failed completely." Kyung-ho stood and walked to his office window. Earth looked peaceful from the orbital station, but he knew the truth. Humans had not reached the stars by being gentle. They had climbed to the top of their world's food chain through millions of years of hunting and fighting. Every human alive was descended from survivors. "Sir?" Dong-soo asked quietly. "What do you think?" Kyung-ho turned back to his assistant. Dong-soo was young and believed in peaceful solutions. He had studied at the best schools and learned all the proper ways to solve problems with words instead of violence. But sometimes, Kyung-ho knew, words had to carry the weight of old instincts. "Tell me about the Thrakari delegation," Kyung-ho said. Dong-soo pulled up another file. Led by someone calling himself Hyunwoo, they all use human names when dealing with other species. It's supposed to make them seem more friendly, but everyone knows it's just for show. How many in their group? 7. All military officers. They've been stationed at Harmony's Edge for 3 weeks, making demands and rejecting every offer. Kyung-ho nodded slowly. Harmony's Edge was the neutral station where difficult negotiations took place. It was designed to be calm and peaceful, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. Perfect for species that solve problems by talking them through carefully and logically. What about the Villani representative, Jinni? She's one of their trade ministers. She's been trying to negotiate for months, but the Thrakari barely listen to her. They treat her like she's not even there. Kyung-ho walked back to his desk and sat down. He had dealt with the Thrakari before, years ago during a border dispute. Most species thought they were just violent and stupid, but Kyung-ho had seen something else. They were hunters, and hunters had their own logic. "Sir, may I ask you something?" Dong-soo said carefully. "Go ahead." The other diplomats, they all failed because they couldn't understand the Thrakari mindset. "What makes you think you can do better?" Kyung-ho smiled, but it was not a pleasant smile. "Because I understand what they are, Dong-soo. The other diplomats see the Thrakari as violent bullies who need to be reasoned with, but that's not what they are. Then what are they? Predators. And predators don't listen to prey animals trying to explain why they shouldn't be eaten." Dong-soo looked confused. "I don't understand." Kyung-ho stood up again and began packing his briefcase. Most species in the galaxy evolved from animals that were hunted. Their ancestors survived by being careful, by avoiding danger, by working together peacefully. Their solution to every problem is to talk it through until everyone agrees. That sounds reasonable. It is reasonable for them. But humans are different. We evolved from hunters. Our ancestors survived by being smart, aggressive, and relentless. We didn't avoid danger. We became the danger. Dong-soo was quiet for a moment. "So you're saying the Thrakari respect strength?" "I'm saying they respect other predators. The consortium keeps sending diplomats who talk like prey animals. Of course the Thrakari ignore them." Kyung-ho finished packing and looked at his assistant. "Pack your things, Dong-soo. We leave for Harmony's Edge in 2 hours. Are you sure about this, sir? If you fail, the Villani could starve to death." Kyung-ho stopped at the door. "The Villani are already starving. The consortium's gentle approach isn't working. Sometimes you need to speak a language the other side understands. And what language is that? The language of hunters. 2 hours later, Kyung-ho and Dong-soo were aboard a fast courier ship heading for Harmony's Edge. During the 3-day journey, Kyung-ho studied everything he could find about the current Thrakari delegation. Hyun-woo was young for a Thrakari leader, only 60 years old in a species that lived to be 300. He had earned his position through victories in combat, not politics. "Look at this," Kyung-ho said, showing Dong-soo a report. "Hyun-woo has never lost a negotiation. Every species that has tried to bargain with him has given up or given in." "That's not encouraging," Dong-soo replied. "Actually, it is. It tells me something important about him." "What?" "He's never faced another predator across a negotiating table." When their ship docked at Harmony's Edge, Kyung-ho could feel the tension immediately. The station's usual calm atmosphere was strained. Diplomatic staff moved quickly through the corridors, their faces worried. Everyone knew that if these talks failed, an entire species might die. Hae-won, the human cultural liaison at the station, met them at the docking bay. She was in her 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes. "Kyung-ho, thank you for coming," she said, shaking his hand. "I won't lie to you. Things are bad. Really bad. How bad?" Kyung-ho asked as they walked toward the diplomatic quarters. "The Thrakari haven't just rejected every offer. They've been insulting every diplomat who talks to them. Yesterday, they told the Andronian ambassador that his species should learn to accept reality instead of wasting everyone's time. What about Jin-ae? She's barely holding together. She knows her people are dying while she sits here listening to impossible demands." They reached Kyung-ho's quarters, and Hae-won stopped. "I have to ask, Kyung-ho, do you really think you can succeed where everyone else has failed?" Kyung-ho looked at her seriously. "Hae-won, what's the first rule of hunting?" She looked confused. "I don't know. I'm not a hunter. Know your prey. The consortium has been treating this like a normal negotiation. But the Thrakari aren't interested in normal negotiations. They want to prove they're stronger than everyone else. So what are you going to do?" Kyung-ho smiled that dangerous smile again. "I'm going to show them what a real predator looks like." The next morning, Kyung-ho did something that surprised everyone at Harmony's Edge. Instead of going straight to the formal meeting rooms, he went to the station's observation deck. This was where diplomats usually went to relax between sessions, not to study their opponents. But Kyung-ho was not there to relax. He found a seat where he could watch the main corridor and waited. Dong-soo sat beside him, looking nervous. "Sir, shouldn't we be preparing for the meeting?" Dong-soo asked. "We are preparing," Kyung-ho replied quietly. "Just not the way you think." At exactly 0900 hours, the Thrakari delegation walked past. Kyung-ho watched them carefully, noting every detail. There were 7 of them, all wearing military uniforms that showed their rank and battle honors. They moved in a specific formation, with Hyun-woo in the center and the others arranged around him. "Interesting," Kyung-ho muttered. "What's interesting?" Dong-soo asked. "Look at how they walk. Hyun-woo is in the center, but he's not actually leading. See the older female on his right? She's setting the pace. And the big male on his left is watching the sides constantly." Dong-soo squinted at the group. "I don't see what you mean." "Pack behavior," Kyung-ho explained. Hyun-woo might be their official leader, but the real alpha is that female. The male is the group's protector. This tells me their delegation isn't as unified as they want everyone to believe. For the next hour, Kyung-ho watched the Thrakari move around the station. He saw how they claimed the best tables in the dining area, how they spoke loudly to make sure everyone could hear them, and how they always traveled in groups of at least 3. "They're marking territory," Kyung-ho observed. "Classic predator behavior." "But this is a neutral station," Dong-soo said. "No one owns any territory here. Tell that to them." At 1000 hours, So-young arrived. She was humanity's cultural attaché and an expert on alien psychology. She found Kyung-ho still watching the Thrakari from his position on the observation deck. "Learning anything useful?" she asked, sitting down beside him. "More than I expected. The Thrakari aren't just being aggressive because they enjoy it. They're scared." So-young raised an eyebrow. "Scared? They've been bullying everyone on this station for weeks." "Exactly. When a predator is confident, it doesn't need to show off constantly. These Thrakari are working very hard to convince everyone they're dangerous." "So you think they're bluffing?" "Not bluffing. But they're not as strong as they want people to believe." Kyung-ho pointed to the group as they passed below. Look at their equipment. Those uniforms are new, but their weapons are old. And see how they keep checking their communication devices. They're getting orders from someone else. So Young pulled out her datapad and made notes. What does that tell us? It tells us they're not here because they're strong. They're here because they need to appear strong. There's a difference. At 1100 hours, Janae found them. The Villani representative looked exhausted. Her fur, which should have been a bright golden color, was dull and patchy. Her large eyes were red from lack of sleep. Ambassador Kyung-ho, she said quietly. I was told you wanted to speak with me. Please sit down, Kyung-ho said gently. Janae was much taller than a human, but she folded her long legs gracefully and sat on the deck's soft cushions. I want to thank you for coming, she continued. My people are running out of hope. Tell me about your last negotiation with the Thrakari, Kyung-ho said. Janae's ears drooped. It was terrible. I offered them everything our trade council authorized. Exclusive contracts, reduced prices, even territorial concessions. Hyun-woo just laughed at me. What exactly did he say? He said weak species don't get to make demands. He said if we were really intelligent, we would understand that the strong take what they want from the weak. Kyung-ho nodded slowly. And how did you respond? I tried to explain that trade should benefit everyone. I showed him economic projections proving that peaceful trade would be more profitable than these sanctions. I thought logic would convince him, but it didn't. He just smiled and said logic was for prey animals. So Young and Dong-soo exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand what Kyung-ho had seen from the beginning. Janae, Kyung-ho said carefully, what do you know about Thrakari culture? They're warriors. They value strength and conquest. But they're also part of the galactic community now. They signed the same treaties we all signed. Those treaties work for species that want peace. But what if a species doesn't really want peace? What if they only signed those treaties because they had to? Janae looked confused. I don't understand. So Young leaned forward. Janae, what would happen to your people if you just gave the Thrakari everything they wanted? We would become their servants. Our children would grow up as slaves. And what would happen if you fought them? We would lose. The Villani are not warriors. We've never been warriors. Kyung-ho stood up and walked to the observation deck's railing. Below, he could see the Thrakari group taking up 3 tables in the dining area, even though they only needed 1. Jinny, there's a third option, but you're not going to like it. What option? Kyung-ho turned back to face her. You let me handle the Thrakari my way, but you have to trust me, even when it looks like I'm making things worse. I don't understand. The Thrakari don't respect the Villani because they see you as prey. Every time you try to reason with them, you confirm that belief. Every offer you make sounds like begging to them. Jinny's ears flattened against her head. But we are peaceful people. We solve problems through discussion and compromise, and that's exactly why they don't take you seriously. So Young pulled up a file on her datapad. Jinny, I've been studying the Thrakari expansion over the last 50 years. Do you know what I found? What? They've never actually conquered anyone by force. Every world they control surrendered after economic pressure or the threat of force. They're very good at making other species give up without a fight. So they're not as strong as they claim? Jinny asked. They're strong enough, Kyung-ho said. But they prefer to win through intimidation. It's more efficient than actual warfare. Then how do we stop them? Kyung-ho checked the time. The formal negotiations would begin in 2 hours. We don't stop them. We give them what they actually want. But they want to enslave my people. No, they don't. They want to prove they're stronger than your people. There's a difference. Dong-soo finally spoke up. Sir, what are you planning to do? Kyung-ho smiled that dangerous smile again. I'm going to walk into that negotiation room and challenge them directly. I'm going to question their strength, their intelligence, and their right to call themselves predators. Jeannie looked horrified. That will make them angry. Yes, it will. And when they're angry, they'll stop thinking like diplomats and start thinking like the hunters they really are. But won't that make things worse? Jinny, things can't get worse. Your people are already dying. The consortium's polite approach has failed completely. We need to try something different. So Young closed her datapad. Kyung-ho, are you sure about this? If you're wrong, you could start a war. If I'm wrong, we'll be in the same position we're in now. But if I'm right, we might find a solution that saves the Villani without anyone having to surrender. As they prepared to leave the observation deck, Kyung-ho stopped and looked at Jinny one more time. Jin'e, I need you to promise me something. When we're in that room, no matter what I say or do, don't try to stop me. Don't apologize for me. Don't try to make peace. Just sit there and let me work. What if you insult them so badly they walk away? Then we'll know they were never serious about negotiating in the first place. Jin'e was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. I trust you, Ambassador. My people have no other hope. As they walked toward the formal meeting rooms, Kyung-ho felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had negotiated with pirates, warlords, and criminal syndicates. But this was different. This time, an entire species depended on his ability to speak the language of predators. The question was whether he remembered it well enough. The main negotiation chamber at Harmony's Edge was designed to promote peace and understanding. Soft blue lighting filled the room, and the chairs were arranged in a perfect circle to show that all species were equal. The walls displayed images of successful treaties and peaceful resolutions from across the galaxy. Kyung-ho hated everything about it. When he walked into the room at exactly 1400 hours, the Thrakari delegation was already seated. They had arranged themselves in a straight line on one side of the circle, with Hyunwoo in the center. It was a military formation that broke the room's carefully planned equality. Jin'e entered quietly and took her seat across from them. Her hands shook slightly as she organized her data pads and preparation materials. For months she had sat in this same chair, making offers and listening to rejections. The other consortium representatives filled the remaining seats. There was Ambassador Velnoth from the Andronian Republic, Trade Minister Kessa Lee from the Hegemony, and several others. They all looked tired and frustrated. Kyung-ho was the last to enter. Instead of taking his assigned seat, he remained standing and looked directly at Hyunwoo. You're smaller than I expected, Kyung-ho said in perfect Thrakari. The room went completely silent. Speaking Thrakari was unusual enough, but no diplomat had ever opened a negotiation with an insult. Hyunwoo's eyes narrowed. He was tall even for a Thrakari, with dark fur marked by white scars from old battles. His claws were longer than regulation military standard, and his teeth were filed to sharp points. I know who you are, human, Hyunwoo replied in standard Galactic. You're the one who thinks words are weapons. Words are tools, Kyung-ho corrected, still standing. Weapons are what you use when tools fail. The older female Thrakari, whose name tag read Sujin, leaned forward slightly. Kyung-ho noticed the movement immediately. She was the real power in their delegation, just as he had suspected. You may sit, Hyunwoo said, gesturing to Kyung-ho's assigned chair. I'll stand. I prefer to look down at people who are afraid. Another silence filled the room. Even Jin'e looked shocked. The other consortium representatives were frozen in their chairs, unsure whether to stop Kyung-ho or let him continue. Afraid? Hyunwoo stood up slowly, his full height reaching nearly 8 feet. You think I'm afraid of a soft human diplomat? I think you're afraid of being exposed as weak, Kyung-ho replied calmly. Why else would you spend 6 months slowly strangling the Vellani instead of just taking what you want directly? We are following proper procedures and you're stalling. Kyung-ho walked closer to the Thrakari delegation. Real predators don't need 6 months to defeat farmers. Real predators strike fast and hard. What you're doing isn't hunting. It's torture. Sujin spoke for the first time. You dare lecture us about hunting human? Your species has been civilized for barely 300 years. Kyung-ho turned his attention to her. My species has been hunting for 3 million years. We were apex predators when your ancestors were still hiding in trees. The room's tension was almost physical now. Dong-soo gripped his chair so hard his knuckles were white. So-young was taking notes rapidly, documenting everything for her psychological analysis. Impossible, the large male Thrakari, whose name tag read Tae-ho, growled. Humans are weak. You have no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. Kyung-ho smiled and several Thrakari shifted uncomfortably. We didn't need claws. We had something better. What? Patience. Humans didn't kill our prey quickly like other predators. We followed them for days, weeks, sometimes months. We never stopped, never gave up, never let them rest. We ran them to exhaustion and then closed in for the kill. Hyunwoo sat back down, but his posture was still aggressive. Ancient history means nothing here. Does it? Tell me, Hyunwoo, how long have you been chasing the Vellani? 6 months. And how much closer are you to victory than when you started? The question hung in the air. Kyung-ho could see the Thrakari delegation exchanging glances. They all knew the answer. The Villani are weakening, Sujin said. Soon they will surrender. Will they? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the ones getting weaker. Kyung-ho pulled out his data pad and began reading. Thrakari military spending is up 40% this year. Your trade deficit has tripled. Your own people are asking why their warriors can't finish a simple negotiation with farmers. How do you know about our internal? Because that's what real predators do. We study our prey before we hunt. We learn their weaknesses, their habits, their fears. Kyung-ho looked directly at Hyun-woo. Right now, your greatest fear is looking weak in front of the galactic community. Tae-ho stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I've heard enough insults from this human. Sit down, Kyung-ho said quietly. Something in his voice made Tae-ho freeze. It wasn't loud or threatening, but it carried absolute authority, the kind of voice that had commanded human armies and negotiated with galactic warlords. Sit down, Kyung-ho repeated. We're not finished talking. Tae-ho slowly returned to his seat. The other Thrakari were staring at Kyung-ho with new interest. For the first time, they were seeing something they recognized. Let me tell you what I see when I look at this situation, Kyung-ho continued. I see a proud warrior species trying to maintain their reputation through a campaign they can't actually win. The Villani won't surrender because dying slowly is the same as dying quickly to them, but you can't escalate to actual warfare because that would bring the entire consortium down on you. We are not afraid of the consortium, Hyun-woo said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe not, but you're afraid of losing face. Every day this negotiation continues, you look weaker. Other species are starting to whisper that the mighty Thrakari can't even handle peaceful farmers. Sujin's ears flattened against her head. What do you propose, human? I propose you stop pretending to be something you're not. Explain. Kyung-ho walked to the center of the circle and looked at each Thrakari in turn. You're not conquerors. You're not raiders. You're soldiers. There's a difference. We have conquered many worlds. You've accepted the surrender of many worlds. That's not the same thing. Kyung-ho turned to face the entire delegation. Soldiers follow orders and maintain discipline. Conquerors take what they want and destroy what they can't use. Raiders steal and run away. You're none of those things. Then what are we? Hyun-woo asked, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely curious rather than angry. You're protectors who haven't figured out what you're protecting yet. The room was silent again, but this time it was thoughtful rather than tense. Even Jin-ae was listening intently, trying to understand where Kyung-ho was leading the conversation. The Thrakari Empire expanded, not because you wanted to conquer, but because you wanted to create order. You saw chaos and weakness around you, and your instincts told you to fix it. But you've been using the wrong methods. We are warriors, Sujin said. We take what we need through strength. Real warriors protect the weak from those who would harm them. They don't become the ones doing the harming. Kyung-ho walked back to his chair but remained standing.
Here's what I think really happened.
The Thrakari leadership saw the Villani trade routes and thought they were vulnerable. You decided to test whether the consortium would protect them. When no one came to their defense, you realized the galaxy is full of prey species with no real predators to keep them safe. And? Hyun-woo asked. And you've been trying to figure out whether you want to be the predators who hunt them or the predators who protect them. For the first time since the negotiations began, none of the Thrakari had an immediate response. Kyung-ho could see them thinking, processing this new perspective on their own actions. The Villani are weak, Tae-ho said finally. They cannot protect themselves. No, they can't, but that doesn't mean they have to be prey. What else can they be? Kyung-ho smiled again, but this time it was less dangerous and more calculating. They can be part of a pack. The word pack hung in the air like an electric charge. Kyung-ho could see the Thrakari delegation processing the concept, their predator instincts recognizing something familiar but unexpected. Explain this pack, Sujin said carefully. Kyung-ho finally sat down, but he chose a chair closer to the Thrakari rather than his assigned seat. It was a subtle power move that placed him between the two sides. On Earth, there were many types of predators. Some hunted alone like tigers. They were strong and dangerous, but they could only take small prey. Others hunted in packs like wolves. They could bring down animals 10 times their size because they worked together. The Thrakari do not need others to make us strong, Tae-ho growled. You're missing the point, Kyung-ho replied. Pack hunting isn't about needing help. It's about efficiency. Why waste energy fighting when you can achieve your goals through cooperation? Hyunwoo leaned forward. Continue. The Villani have something you need: food production, trade networks, and strategic location. You have something they need: military protection and political influence. Instead of one side taking from the other, both sides contribute to shared success. That sounds like the trade agreements we already rejected, Ambassador Velnoth interrupted. The consortium has offered mutual benefit arrangements for months. Kyung-ho didn't even look at the Andronian diplomat. The consortium offers contracts between equals. I'm talking about pack structure. There's a difference. Janae spoke for the first time since the session began. What kind of difference? In a contract, both sides try to get the best deal for themselves. In a pack, the alpha protects the others, and the others support the alpha. It's not about equal partnership. It's about effective hierarchy. The room went quiet again. This was dangerous territory. The Galactic Consortium was built on the idea that all species were equal partners in a peaceful community. Kyung-ho was suggesting something completely different. You're proposing that the Thrakari become the dominant partner, So-young said, making notes on her datapad. I'm proposing that the Thrakari accept the role they're already playing, Kyung-ho corrected. You've already established dominance over the Villani through these sanctions. The question is whether you're going to use that dominance destructively or constructively. Sujin tilted her head, a gesture that meant deep thought among her species. What would constructive dominance look like? Kyung-ho stood and walked to the room's main display screen. He pulled up a star map showing the local trade routes. Look at this region. 17 star systems connected by trade routes that carry food, raw materials, and manufactured goods. The Villani control the agricultural center, but they're vulnerable to raiders, pirates, and economic pressure from larger empires. He highlighted several recent incidents on the map. In the last 2 years, Villani convoys have been attacked 6 times. Their trade stations have been robbed 4 times. 3 different criminal organizations have tried to establish protection rackets in their territory. We know this, Hyunwoo said. That's why we chose them as targets. Exactly. But you chose wrong tactics. Instead of becoming another threat, you could have become their protectors. The display changed to show shipping manifests and trade data. The Villani food exports feed over 1 billion people across 7 systems. Their trade routes carry 40% of the manufactured goods in this sector. If their economy collapses, it destabilizes the entire region. And, Taeho asked, and the Thrakari military could ensure none of that happens. Your ships could escort Villani convoys. Your stations could provide secure docking. Your reputation could discourage criminal activity in their space. Minho, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, stepped forward. He was humanity's military attaché and an expert on defensive strategy. Ambassador Kyung-ho is describing a protection arrangement, Minho explained. The Thrakari provide security services and the Villani provide resources and trade benefits in return. How is that different from what we're already demanding? Hyunwoo asked. Scale and presentation, Kyung-ho replied. Right now you're asking for tribute payments that weaken the Villani economy. I'm suggesting a partnership that strengthens it. He changed the display to show economic projections. Protected trade routes are more profitable than threatened ones. Secure systems attract more business than dangerous ones. If the Thrakari guaranteed Villani safety, their trade volume could increase by 30% within a year. More trade means more resources available for protection payments, Sujin observed. Exactly. But more importantly, it means the Thrakari become known as protectors rather than raiders. That reputation has value across the entire galaxy. Dongsu pulled up additional files on his datapad. Sir, should I show them the analysis of protection economies? Kyung-ho nodded. The display changed again, showing historical examples from human space. During Earth's early expansion, human merchant guilds hired military companies for protection services. The most successful arrangements weren't based on one-time payments, but on percentage partnerships. The military companies received a share of increased profits, not just base fees. The merchants became wealthier, so they could afford better protection, Minho added. The military companies became more selective about their clients, building reputations for reliability. Everyone benefited. Taeho looked skeptical. This assumes the Villani can be trusted to honor long-term agreements. That's where pack dynamics come in, Kyung-ho said. In a pack, loyalty isn't based on contracts. It's based on mutual survival. He turned to face Jine directly. Jine, what happens to your people if the Thrakari withdraw their protection and raiders attack your convoys? We would be defenseless, she admitted. And what happens to the Thrakari if your economy collapses and you can't provide resources? Hyunwoo considered this. We would lose a significant source of income and have to find other targets, which would make you enemies of whoever you target next. Meanwhile, the Villani would probably ally with your competitors for protection. The logic was becoming clear to everyone in the room. A protection arrangement would lock both species into mutual dependence, making betrayal costly for either side. There's another benefit, So Young added, looking up from her notes. The galactic community responds differently to protectors than to conquerors. The consortium might even support a formal protection treaty. Ambassador Velnoth shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The consortium does not typically approve of hierarchical arrangements between member species. The consortium approves of stability, Kyung-ho countered. Right now this region is unstable because the Villani are vulnerable and the Thrakari are frustrated. A protection arrangement would solve both problems. It would also create a precedent, Velnoth warned. Other military species might demand similar arrangements with weaker neighbors. Good, Kyung-ho said bluntly. The galaxy is full of prey species with no natural defenses. Predator species keep attacking them because there's no cost to doing so. If predators could profit more from protection than from destruction, everyone would be safer. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Kyung-ho had just proposed fundamentally changing how galactic politics worked. You're suggesting we become mercenaries, Soo-jin said finally. I'm suggesting you become what you've always been, warriors who fight for a cause. The only question is whether that cause is your own enrichment or galactic stability. Hyunwoo stood and walked to the star map display. He studied the trade routes and shipping data for several minutes while everyone waited. This protection arrangement, he said finally. What would the terms look like? That depends, Kyung-ho replied. How serious are you about being apex predators? Explain. Apex predators don't just hunt. They shape entire ecosystems. They determine which species thrive and which ones disappear. They maintain balance through their presence, not just their actions. Kyung-ho walked to stand beside Hyunwoo at the display. The Thrakari could become the apex predators of this region. Not by conquering everyone, but by ensuring that only cooperative species prosper and aggressive species face consequences. You're talking about regional hegemony, Minho observed. I'm talking about efficient predation. Why fight 17 different wars when you can establish dominance once and maintain it through reputation? Hyunwoo turned to face his delegation. Kyung-ho could see them communicating through subtle body language and micro-expressions. They were having a conversation without words, the way pack animals did when making group decisions. Finally, Soo-jin spoke. We need to discuss this proposal with our leadership. Of course, Kyung-ho said. But while you're discussing it, consider this. Every day you delay, other species are watching. They're deciding whether the Thrakari are strong enough to be trusted as protectors, or just another group of raiders who got in over their heads. As the Thrakari delegation prepared to leave for their private consultation, Hyunwoo stopped and looked back at Kyung-ho. Human. You speak like a predator, but you negotiate like prey. You offer benefits instead of demanding submission. Why? Kyung-ho smiled that dangerous smile one more time. Because the apex predator doesn't need to prove it's dangerous. Everyone already knows. The Thrakari delegation returned to the negotiation chamber 6 hours later. During their absence, the other consortium representatives had peppered Kyung-ho with questions, concerns, and warnings about the precedent he was setting. He had ignored most of them. Janae had spent the time reviewing trade data and economic projections. For the first time in months, she looked hopeful rather than desperate. I think I understand what you're doing, she had told Kyung-ho during the break. You're not trying to save us from the Thrakari. You're trying to save us with them. Now you're thinking like a predator, he had replied. When Hyunwoo and his team returned, their body language had changed. They moved with more confidence but less aggression. Soo-jin walked beside Hyunwoo as an equal rather than slightly behind him. Taeho no longer looked like he wanted to challenge everyone in the room. We have made our decision, Hyunwoo announced as they took their seats. The room held its collective breath. The Thrakari Empire is willing to discuss a protection arrangement with the Villani Confederation. But we have conditions. Of course you do, Kyung-ho said. What are they? First, this cannot be presented as surrender or submission by either side. The Vallani must acknowledge Thrakari military supremacy, and the Thrakari must acknowledge Vallani economic expertise. Jin'e nodded immediately. My people understand the difference between partnership and conquest. Second, the arrangement must be profitable for both sides from the beginning. We will not wait years for theoretical benefits. Kyung-ho turned to Jin'e. Can your trade council authorize immediate concessions? If it means survival for my people, yes. Third, Sujin continued, this agreement must include provisions for expansion. Other systems in the region should be invited to join the protection network. Ambassador Velnoth leaned forward. The consortium cannot approve. The consortium doesn't need to approve anything, Kyung-ho interrupted. This is a bilateral treaty between sovereign species. The only requirement is that it doesn't violate existing galactic laws. And it doesn't, Minho added, consulting his legal database. Protection services are legal under consortium trade regulations. Taeho spoke for the first time since returning. We also require that human representatives oversee the initial implementation. Everyone turned to look at him in surprise. Why? Dongsu asked. Because humans understand predator psychology better than any other species in the consortium, Yanwu explained. You proved that today. We want to ensure this arrangement develops properly. Kyung-ho considered this request. It made sense from the Thrakari perspective. They were taking a risk by changing their approach, and they wanted experienced guidance. I can recommend several human diplomatic teams who specialize in security arrangements, he said finally. We want you, Sujin said directly. Me? I'm already committed to other negotiations. Then uncommit yourself. The Thrakari Empire formally requests Ambassador Kyung-ho as mediator for the Vallani Protection Treaty. Yujin, the station coordinator, had been quietly documenting everything for the official record. Now she looked up from her datapad. Ambassador, such a request carries significant weight under consortium protocols. If you accept, you would be assigned to oversee this arrangement for at least one standard year. Kyung-ho looked around the room. Jin'e was watching him with desperate hope. The Thrakari delegation was waiting for his answer with predator patience. The other consortium representatives were trying to decide whether this whole situation was brilliant or catastrophic. I accept, Kyung-ho said, but only if both sides agree to my methods, which are, Hyunwoo asked. We designed this arrangement to work, not to look good in political reports. If that means breaking some diplomatic traditions, so be it. Agreed, Jin'e said immediately. Agreed, Hyunwoo echoed. For the next 4 hours, they worked through the basic framework of what would become known as the Vallani Protection Treaty. The negotiations moved faster than any previous session, because both sides were working toward the same goal instead of against each other. The Thrakari would provide military protection for Vallani trade routes, stations, and colonial worlds. In exchange, the Vallani would provide food supplies, manufactured goods, and 20% of their increased trade profits to the Thrakari military budget. More importantly, both species would jointly invite other systems to join the protection network. New members would pay fees for protection services while contributing their own specialties to the growing alliance. This could become quite large, So Young observed as they mapped out potential expansion. That's the idea, Kyung-ho replied. A protection network only works if it's large enough to discourage attacks from outside forces. As the formal session ended, Hyunwoo approached Kyung-ho privately. I need to ask you something, human. When you first challenged us, were you certain this would work? No, Kyung-ho admitted. I was certain the current approach wasn't working. Sometimes that's enough. But you risked everything on a theory about predator behavior. Not a theory. Experience. Kyung-ho looked directly into the Thrakari's yellow eyes. Hyunwoo, do you know how humans became the dominant species on their planet? You told us. Persistence hunting, that's only part of it. The real secret was cooperation. Humans learned to hunt in packs, share resources, and protect each other from larger predators. We became apex predators not through individual strength, but through collective intelligence. And you think the Thrakari can learn this? I think the Thrakari already know it. You just forgot for a while. 3 days later, Kyung-ho stood in the station's observation deck watching the Thrakari and Vallani delegations work together on implementation details. Jin'e and Sujin were reviewing trade route security protocols. Tejo and several Villani logistics experts were planning joint training exercises. It's remarkable, Haywan said, joining him at the railing. A week ago, they looked ready to go to war. Now they're planning joint military exercises. Predators are remarkably adaptable, Kyung-ho replied. They have to be or they don't survive. Is that really what this was about? Predator psychology? Kyung-ho was quiet for a moment, watching the mixed groups below. It was about understanding what people actually want versus what they think they want. The Thrakari thought they wanted to conquer the Villani, but what they really wanted was respect and purpose. The Villani thought they wanted to be left alone, but what they really needed was protection. And the consortium? The consortium wanted stability and was willing to sacrifice the Villani to get it. Now they have real stability, built on mutual benefit instead of mutual fear. Dong-Su approached with a communication device. Sir, you have a message from Earth. It's marked urgent. Kyung-ho read the message quickly. Well, that was fast. What is it? Haewon asked. 3 other protection arrangements in different sectors, all requesting human mediation. Apparently word of the Villani treaty is spreading quickly. Are you going to accept? Kyung-ho looked down at the mixed delegations again. Hyunwoo was explaining something to Jin-ae with animated gestures. She was taking notes and asking questions. 2 species that had been enemies a week ago were now planning their shared future. I suppose I am, he said finally. It seems there's a lot of demand for predators who know how to build packs instead of just hunting alone. That evening, as the various delegations prepared to return to their home systems, Kyung-ho received one final visitor. Hyunwoo found him in his quarters packing his files and reports. I wanted to thank you, the Thrakari said, and to ask you something. What's the question? You said humans became apex predators through cooperation, but you negotiated alone. Why didn't you use a pack? Kyung-ho smiled and gestured to the reports scattered across his desk. Who do you think gathered all this intelligence? Who provided the psychological analysis? Who handled the legal research and the economic projections? Your team, exactly. I was never hunting alone, Hyunwoo. I was just the visible member of the pack, the one who made the approach while the others provided support. So the human delegation was a pack, led by the member best suited for this particular hunt. Kyung-ho closed his briefcase and looked at the Thrakari. The strongest predator isn't always the one with the biggest claws. Sometimes it's the one with the best pack. As Hyunwoo left, Kyung-ho reflected on the week's events. The Villani would survive and prosper. The Thrakari had found a new purpose that suited their nature. The consortium had a new model for handling conflicts between predator and prey species, and humans had once again proven that sometimes the best solution to a problem was to remember what millions of years of evolution had taught them about survival. In his final report to Earth, Kyung-ho wrote, "The galaxy is full of species that forgot their original nature when they joined the galactic community. Sometimes the best diplomatic service we can provide is to help them remember who they really are and find productive ways to express their true selves." He paused, then added, "Humans should never forget that we are predators, but we should also remember that the best predators are the ones who make their prey stronger, not weaker. That's how ecosystems thrive, and that's how civilizations endure." The message was sent with high priority to the diplomatic corps, along with a request for more negotiators trained in predator psychology. Within a week,